Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lethal Weapon. Now, before I get started, I'm going to bring up some very interesting things about this episode that it took me forever to realize. I didn't realize it till this episode, but the actress who plays Miranda in this show is actually the same actress who plays Maggie in Supergirl. It never crossed my mind because I don't know, like you see, it's not like Miranda hasn't popped up before, but it's just like, I don't know why, it never clicked. Like just when it began, the episode began, just seeing like that profile, like shot of her, like, you know, the, just opening scene, I'm like, huh. I was like, oh, Maggie from Supergirl's in this. That's so cool. And I saw Riggs and everything. I'm like, oh, so this isn't the past. That's him meeting Miranda. And I felt so stupid. The actress who plays her name is Floriana. I think the thing I said, Google says Lima. I'm inclined to say Lima, but either way, it's just like, I can't believe I didn't realize that was her. And just the entire episode, I'm looking, I'm like, how did I not realize that? And also, side note thing I want to talk about too was, Alicia Diaz being in this episode. I thought that was just kind of interesting how the episode I did today of Frequency was also had her in it too. So I thought that's kind of interesting. I don't know. I trip out every time I see her because it's like she's in a lot of stuff at the same time. Like while Ray Donovan was on Zoo, the show Zoo kind of crossed over like schedule wise. So I was seeing her on both Ray Donovan and on Zoo at the same time. So that's what kind of, I know production schedules and stuff like that. It's just kind of interesting to me just how like that can work like that. It's not that big of a deal, but just something I kind of want to get out of the way. This episode was pretty rough. It was a very heavily serious episode. So kind of like my favorite kind of more lighthearted moments of the episode. I kind of get them out of the way first. For one, like the whole situation with his neighbor, Jim. Basically, they having a problem because basically Jim goes overboard with the whole Christmas decoration, got a whole bunch of lights going off, and he basically messes the power grid. I mean, periodically throughout the episode, the power keeps going out to their house and stuff like that, which kind of helps in the at the end of things, but I'll kind of get to that enough. But it's like the fact is that Roger goes up to him and they start talking, and he's like, hey, Jim, like, you know, the fact is, he's like, so he's like, oh, you're a firefighter now, huh? He's like, no, the fact is they don't let firefighters hold guns. And he's like, you know what? Basically almost threatening Roger with floss, and Roger's like, what the hell does that motion even mean? He even asked Grace later on. I was like, huh, like, can you really threaten someone? Like, what's threatening someone with floss? And he kind of does it. He's like, huh, that's kind of interesting, because apparently the dude's a dentist. And that was just so kind of interesting that there's kind of that neighborly beef, because we've never really got to know any of their neighbors outside of that. That's what I was kind of thinking, like, I thought the episode was going to start off with, like, oh, Roger goes over there and finds out his neighbor's dead or something like that. I legitimately thought that's how things were going to play out. And then there's a whole, like, Riggs situation, like, when they meet up with Eddie at first, and just, like, how joking they are and just stuff like that. It's like, oh, Eddie, is that you? Eddie, haven't seen you in such a long time. I'm sorry. I'm sitting there. He's like, Roger's like, I haven't. I'm so sorry. Roger, this is Eddie. Eddie, this is Roger. He's like, I've heard so many good things about you. And it's like, hey, Eddie, we just had to come over. Saw you from across the room. I had to just be like, hey, Eddie. And just about, yeah, better be careful. We don't want to lose our heads. I see what you did. It's so funny. I know. It's just, I think, isn't the actor's name Clayne Crawford? Him and Damian Wayans have such good chemistry. They play their characters and just have so much fun so well. It's one of the things I just love about the show just so much. It's just how much fun they can have and stuff like that. It's just like later on when they're busting him and everything, it's like, oh man, I was like, okay, so let me tell you a story. Okay, it's about this. And then Roger's like, no, come on, you're not even telling the story right. Okay, fine, you tell it. He's like, okay, so there's chestnuts roasting, and it's just, I love their partnership. Even the fact is that Roger, the entire episode was lying. It's like, Trish kept asking, so he came here asking that one of his reindeer went missing. Did you steal one? What? No. But I'll be looking on, like, into it immediately. I just came back home to fix me some coffee so I can, get back to the job and stop some bad guys. So, like I said, very nice, lighthearted aspect to it too. But like I said, it was a very heavily deep and serious episode in a sense of what it ended up focusing on, because this is like Christmas time brings up a lot of reminders for Riggs, because around Christmas time, it's the first time him and Miranda met. We actually got to see that in this episode. They met in a bar. She missed her flight, so she couldn't go home for Christmas. Start talking to Riggs, kind of being just kind of that, being his very charmful self. And they kind of immediately hit it off. I mean, she looks at his place and I'm like, oh, your place is a little, even has like a tiny Christmas tree. Nothing really special to really sneeze at or whatever. But it was just kind of like, it just kind of an immediate thing to kind of hit it off. Even jumps to them like the following, I don't know whether it was necessarily that Christmas or probably like a following Christmas after they've been dating a while. But the fact is, she convinced him to wear a red sweater. He was like, really? I'm supposed to wear it? She's like, don't wear. Mine is up there. That's why I'm not wearing mine. It's in my parents' house. But like everyone's wearing one, so you have to come in. And so basically she shows up and they open the door and her father opens the door and everyone inside's not wearing one. And it's just like, wait, you tricked me? And it's like, yeah, you actually got him to wear it. So I don't know. It's very nice to get to see that side of Miranda because we never really got to know Miranda too much. Because anytime we see Miranda, it's mainly through like little tidbits, mostly from the little bit we got to see in the first episode of her. So this is our first episode really getting to see kind of Miranda's personality kind of shine through when it comes to the whole situation. But like I said, essentially, this episode dealt heavily with the fact is that Riggs is crossing paths with a cartel guy named Eddie Flores that he kind of crossed paths with because it starts with a woman named Elena being murdered and how she had a person's name in her phone. Well, someone that she had a meeting with known simply as H. Well, she had Riggs and Roger kind of be like, oh, she was having an affair. She was cheating. So like the H could be someone. It could be Henry or Hugo. And Riggs is like, Hugo? Who has an affair with a Hugo? And then you're finding out it's a lady named Hannah, played by the lovely Lisa Diaz, who I think I say her name like every time. It's like the Elisa Milano thing. It was like I never really know how to properly pronounce it. Even when I hear it, I always like stammer a little bit because I'm afraid I'm going to say it wrong. Because I feel like because part of me wants to say it almost like Alicia, but it's like Elisa. I don't know. Nevertheless, she's Hannah, who is a person that Elena was meeting because apparently Hannah is a journalist. I mean, understandable why I said is a journalist, and basically Elena didn't really know who her boyfriend was, who Eddie was at first, but then she found out, and she decided she wanted to help Hannah take him down, kind of, But the fact is, because the thing is, the reason why he's not in jail now is because back in the day when Riggs kind of already went after him before he got off because their only star witness got beheaded, so. And because what really sparks this episode, which makes it kind of depressing, is the whole Eddie aspect, trying to mess with Riggs' head. He's being like, hey, he's like, yeah, this is a terrible time to be alone, time when you lose people you care about, friends, your partner, your wife, and it kind of just clicks in Riggs' head, and Riggs kind of grabs him and kind of holds him over the edge, and the entire time Eddie's just smiling about it. Roger had to calm him down and tell him, like, hey, don't do that. Like, there's too many witnesses around here. He's just trying, even going like, he's just trying to get inside your head. He's lying to you. Because there's been a point in an episode where Riggs has Scorsese, because I learned his name, the ME kind of look into Miranda's case, because he even bribes him at first. He's like, oh yeah, okay, so the person is Miranda. Oh, he's like, because basically he looked through the file himself and he never saw any evidence of like the person, because it was kind of a drunk driving accident, because that was never really brought up, like what the whole circumstances was. So it was kind of like, okay, maybe it was just kind of, obviously an accident, because it's like, we never actually got to see how Riggs reacted towards the person who that happened. We don't even know if that other person ended up surviving or not, but nevertheless, it's just kind of labeled as a drunk driving accident. And Riggs is so determined to believe that, Eddie is telling the truth. That fact is that it was basically a hit, and it would make sense because Eddie was trying to like get back at Riggs for doing what he did, kind of causing problems and everything. But it turns out, well, from Scorsese's report, like when he was looking through things, he's like, sorry, Riggs, but it's not like that. Because Riggs, because it's like, not only is it's such a hard time for him, because it's something Trish kind of points out. It's like, because this Christmas, like if you asked him a year ago, he would have thought him in present day would be with Miranda and their baby. And it's like now he's like all alone. And it's just like, it's just so heartbreaking, dude. And it's to have Eddie kind of throw it in his face that maybe or maybe not the cartel has something to do with it. More specifically, Eddie might have had something to do with it. And you even had that moment later on in the episode when Riggs is loading his gun and he's got it pointed toward himself, and Roger's almost about to walk in and he pulls a gun away from his face. I'm not sure if Roger actually saw him with the gun to his face, because he's like, oh, what was that? Is that meant for Eddie? And he's like, don't ask a question you don't actually want an answer to, which is like, I don't think Roger actually saw the gun. I was like, wow, dude. I was like, I'm sure it was going to be a situation where he killed Eddie first and then killed himself maybe afterwards. Because the question he kept bringing up is like, Roger even asked him, was like, what were you going to do after that? The fact is, once you killed Eddie, there really would be nothing left for him. It's like, what would you do then? Would you really be giving up? He's like, well, what's left for me after that anyway? Because he brought it up before, like, originally why he didn't actually ever kill himself is because Miranda would kind of be disappointed in him, but it's still like, dealing with the pain of going on every day. And it's just like, around Christmas time is a special time for multiple reasons. I mean, it's the same time they first met. It's, got to meet her parents. It's even the day he found out that she was pregnant because she gave it to him as a present. And it's like, so Christmas time is a very rough time for him. But luckily, they were able to retrieve some evidence from the the card from the camera that recorded the whole Elena's murder. Because originally it was with Hannah, but Hannah took it with her and then sadly got exploded in her car, which sucked. I was hoping Roger was able to get to her in time. I was like, okay, Roger, get to her. It's like, oh man, she's literally already in her car. It's like, it's too late, isn't it? And boom, I was like, oh. Because the sad thing is, Eddie was gloating about it too on the phone, like talking to Riggs, kind of like, oh yeah, why did you decide to move here and stuff like that, talking to him while the car exploded. And it just, I don't know, man. I was not expecting her to die, like, just because it's like the whole like, oh, Alicia Diaz is and stuff. So, oh, her character's dead immediately. I was like, oh, that's because her being a journalist and everything, I thought she'd be kind of a recurring character during the episode. I was even thinking like it'd be a twist where it's like, oh, actually she was the one behind Elena's death for other reasons, maybe kind of to bolster her own career or something like that. Because I was thinking like what was going to end up happening is the fact is that Riggs pushes towards Eddie, but it wasn't actually Eddie that killed him, but killed Elena. But it turns out, yep, it was Eddie who killed Elena and also Hannah. And the reason why they were able to capture, because at first Riggs was about to give up hope, because it's like, we're not going to catch him legally, because Roger trying to convince him to like go things through the legal route. But what they were able to do is they caught a reflection of his face off a ball ornament on a tree in Elena's apartment, and they caught him that way. But then Riggs gets a call from his uncle, from Eddie's uncle, and it's like, hey, give me my nephew or your partner's family's done, because basically a hit guy is there and he's got he's like, oh, it's pretty heavy and stuff like that. I thought what was going to happen is that he's going to have the present and he's going to drop it off there and like it's actually a bomb. That's what I was thinking was going to be. I didn't think it was going to be a situation where his family died, Roger's family died or anything. I knew it would be a situation where he saved the day, but I wasn't expecting that, like for it just to be a decoy to come in and like hold them hostage. I mean, more specifically Trish, because Trish played it calm and like the kids were coming downstairs and she's like, oh, just go watch TV. I got to talk to this man. He's a friend of your dad's and stuff like that. And it's like, the kids there, because if you hold a gun to the kids, it'll panic and you want everyone to stay calm. So this is the best solution, just handling business, like handling things very rationally and trying to hold the fort down, because she knew, she's like, Roger's gonna come. And Roger, like, because initially Riggs was like, I'm gonna go save your family, but Roger's like, no, I got this. Shows up, essentially they end up using like I said, the whole blackout situation in their favor. And then it turns out it's like, she turns on a coffee. It's like, oh, I got to flip the breakers. Go in there. Roger's got the shotgun to him. It's like, hey, don't make a move or I'm going to put you down. Give me an excuse to splatter you all over the garage. And the guy tries to make a move, but Roger goes, bam, 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 knocks him down. Even got Trish stepping on his hand and kicking him. It's like, I told you. Part of me was halfway expecting her to lean down and punch him in the face the way she was kind of leaning in like that. So I thought she was going to lean in and punch him. But kicking him's just as good, so. And then on the side with Riggs ended up finding out that they're okay, and he held a gun to Eddie's face. And you see Eddie at first kind of still smiling a little bit, but then Tom kept going on there. So like, oh, this is getting real serious. He's like, so tell me about my wife. Tell me the truth. Did you have her killed or not? And all of a sudden you see his uncle kind of give a nod and pow. And it's like, I was like, immediately, I was like, okay, I definitely know he didn't shoot Riggs, did he? And then it's like, nope, he didn't. He shot his own nephew. I was like, that's what this was all really about. He wanted to get his nephew because his nephew caused too much problem. Whether his nephew's actually dead, I don't know. I mean, they did drag his body. I mean, that could have been, I mean, I think he's not dead. I think that was meant to kind of like punishment, but I don't know, maybe he is dead because basically for him it's like his nephew caused too many problems, caught too much attention with just being careless. So he's very unpredictable. So it's like in their line of business, the whole cartel situation, it's like you don't want someone like that kind of running around things. So it's like might as well kind of remove him from the equation. So it seemed like the point, I guess it was kind of like with the whole situation, it was like that was kind of, I guess, the thing is, were they planning on killing Eddie from the beginning, or was it just kind of like, well, the situation is what it is, shoot him so we can kind of take care of this so he doesn't have to worry about Eddie answering any questions. So he asked him, and the uncle gives him the answer. He's like, you didn't matter then and you don't matter now. So kind of saying like, hey, they didn't have anything to do with Miranda's death. Possibly, because the fact is Riggs is still looking at it at the end of the episode. Plus, we overhear the uncle having a conversation with someone about like the fact is that well, they say keep him on a short leash. I don't know whether they're talking about Eddie or were they talking about Riggs, because they're talking about, he brought up the fact is he brought up his wife, and it's like, yeah, I told him the truth. Now, once again, that could be interpreted as like, I told him the truth, that the fact is that he didn't matter then and he doesn't matter now. That the fact is what happened with Miranda wasn't about him. It might actually have something to do with her dad, or, you know, whether it's like him in the present or maybe something from his past coming back to haunt him. Maybe he, you know, because you never know. Maybe it's a situation like he grew up with the wrong people back in the day, but he kind of distanced himself from that life and became, you know, because it seems like he's connected to the law enforcement and stuff like that, because he's the one that got Riggs the new position that he's in, like got him to transfer from Texas here to LA, kind of giving him not just a fresh start, but I think it was more so than anything, it was a means of keeping Riggs close because he needed a reminder, because Riggs still hasn't visited them. Was it during Thanksgiving? I think that's what it was. Well, maybe not Thanksgiving, but it was like, it might have been, I don't remember. But his dad, Miranda's dad was like, you know, come visit, like, you know, because it's like, it'd be nice to have Riggs around again, because he hasn't visited, he hasn't, you know, come over for Sunday dinner, but Riggs couldn't bring himself to do it. So obviously it does seem like there is more to Miranda's death. Like, I didn't even think about that being a storyline. I mean, it kind of makes sense it would be just from a storytelling perspective, but it's like, I don't know, I just never thought. I thought it just, you know, the fact is he'd have to deal with that, because like I say, I don't remember the Lethal Weapon movies at all. I really need to. I keep bringing up the fact is I'm on watch them, but I still have yet to do it, so I need to at some point go back and watch them, just kind of compare, like, you know, how much of the stories are similar. Obviously, like, the main stuff. I mean, but you never know, because with the first episode, that's typically how stuff is that's based on movies. Usually the first episode is kind of roughly close to the movie, and then it kind of departs, obviously, because like it's like the first episode's a much more condensed version of the movie where things has changed, obviously, to fit a TV format. So I'm curious to see like whether any other cases or other stuff that they come across in the movies that might have popped up in the show that was kind of changed a little bit. Just kind of curious. But it did kind of end on a more lighter note where we have the Murtaughs coming to visit Riggs at his place, and it's just kind of like, you know, it's like the fact is you might feel like you're alone at like this time, and it's like, oh, you kind of want to be alone, but the fact of the matter is at the end of the day you're part of this family too, so you know, family's got to be together at this time. So it was very sweet. So like I said, it ended on a very nice note. It will be taking a break. It won't be coming back until January 4th, interestingly enough, kind of tying in with Frequency, which comes back on January 4th too. I just thought that was kind of interesting. So, but nevertheless, you know, I guess we'll have to wait till then to see like what else, what other trouble Riggs and Murtaugh will get in, find out more about this whole situation with Miranda. So still can't believe that. I feel so crappy about not realizing that. So more props to Floriana. Like I said, I'm struggling in my head to decide. I go Lima, but maybe it is properly pronounced Lima. So, nevertheless, more props to her. I just cannot believe she does a bang up job as Miranda. It's kind of like I said, it was very nice to kind of get to know Miranda a little bit. Like only bits of Miranda we knew were from the first episode, and then the little bits and pieces of when Riggs is thinking about her, kind of like we never get to see her personality kind of got to shine through. It's like, and you're just like, because for one, I love her as Maggie on Supergirl for many different reasons, just because it's like her and Alex are doing her thing, and it's like, yay, Alex has got a significant other, because it's like when you think about it, she's been I know I'm crossing streams here, but she's been single for a while, and it's just like obviously Maggie's got a thing for Alex, and Alex, like I want people who obviously have things for each other to be together. I want it as simple as that. So just nevertheless, I just thought that was kind of interesting, and so I had to point that out yet again. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.